Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Thank you very much. Hi everybody, my name is Wes J. I'm an alcoholic. Wow. And I'm glad to be here. I'm always glad to be at an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. It's hard to know where to begin, as if I needed a suggestion. Welcome to our newcomers. I think you've heard most, if not much, of what the program is all about. We used to have a speaker on the circuit who would make a statement like that and then talk for an hour and a half, and some of you may remember him. But I only have about 45 minutes. If you notice the gentleman bringing me to the podium, you may have noted that I have no eyesight. And I can tell you here and now it's something of an inconvenience, but over the years, I came first in July of 1960. I found my last drink, the one that I pray will be my last drink, in September of 63. And I've lost my eyesight since being on the program, and it's brought an additional flavor to this experience. Let me explain it this way. I'm particularly grateful to those who did the reading tonight, such as Carolyn for Chapter 5 and the gentleman who read the traditions. I'm familiar with these in Chapter 3 and various other portions of our program, having heard them so many times. But over the years, I've spun off of this habit of having a visit with the reader, a kind of a hobby, call it a hobby of collecting bloopers. And as I got myself together up here, it occurred to me that you might hear you might enjoy one or two of these specimens. I was kind of carefully listening as Caroline launched into Chapter 5 because she did not read, "Rarely have we seen a person go to jail who has thoroughly followed our path." Or the gentleman reading the traditions didn't start out by saying, "Our common warfare should come first." You know. This one I liked. Halfway down on the first page of Chapter 5. If you've decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any lengths to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. At some of these, we barked. Or step 6, we were entirely ready to have God restore all these defects of character. Or in step 10, we continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly omitted it. This one, I understand, I just found it out. Thank you. Step 11 is kind of cagey. We sought through prayer and medication. And one last one, then I'll get on with the business of it. This lovely young lady's reading Chapter 5, and she's coming up to the steps, and it all happened about like this. Here are the steps we took which are suggested as a program of recovery. 1, we admitted that we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmentionable. Which slightly understates the case, I might say. I came to our program for the first time in July of 1960. And because of what I've learned since I've been here, I can now describe what my condition was on that occasion with more accuracy. I was physically ill. I was mentally ill. I was emotionally ill. And I did not know the meaning of the word spiritual. It is in these four dimensions that I've discovered that we live our life. It was Monday morning. I was due at work, but I couldn't get out of bed to make it to a bathroom door that was less than 10 feet away. As I stand here now in the end of August 1978 at about 6'3", something like that, I'm weighing a little over 200 pounds. That morning, at about the same height, I was weighing less than 145 pounds. I can't tell you how long I'd been drinking. I had fouled the bed in which I was laying at the time, and I was laying there wondering rather idly what to do about all this when the phone rang. And it was a desk buddy at work who called me to find out what to tell the boss in case the boss came around looking for me. I was working over at Hughes El Segundo at the time, and this was a mutual support service we had performed for each other over the years. And in the process, we got to talking about what a mess I was. And this gentleman, who still today, and I'm almost scratched by the fact that he thinks he has a little problem when he's drinking too much coffee, you know. But we got to talking about what a mess I was, and he made a suggestion, actually in the form of a question. He said, well, have you ever thought of calling Alcoholics Anonymous? And I was annoyed. Well, why do I need them? In spite of the fact that I could stand at that point in time in July of 1960 and look back on a drinking career which had lasted the better part of 26 years up to July of 60, in which the more I search with my 4th, 5th, and 10th steps, the more I have been unable to find what might be called a normal drink. Now, one of the things I think the definition of a normal drink ought to have as part of it is that you stop of your own accord. And I can't find such a drinking experience. I always had to be stopped by some condition or force outside myself. I had my first drink in 1936. I drank myself into a blackout. I was 16. I had the next opportunity. That was the Depression, and teenagers didn't have much money in those days. In 1937, I had my next opportunity, again, a blackout. In 1938, I had my next opportunity, again, a blackout. And it really didn't mean anything to me. I went around sort of with the feeling that if you hadn't had a blackout or had raised hell in some form or another, you couldn't claim that you'd had any fun. That was kind of the way I thought in those days. I had to come to AA many years later, of course, to learn that the blackout is a primary symptom of this illness we call alcoholism. In 1941, I went into the military, and I was to be there for 11 years. I was retired from the military in 1952 because of this eye problem. With the help of therapy, the Veterans Administration, and so on, I've learned one or two things that are very much a part of my drinking career. One of these is that the military is a pretty good place to hide out, especially during that period, if you happen to be a drunk, as I am, whether you think so or not. Another thing that came out was I have what is apparently an intense sense of responsibility, but the psychiatric name for it is excessive neurotic devotion. What this means in simple terms is I never get involved normally in anything. There are only two states, well, up until the program anyway, there are only two states of my entry into any kind of a thing. Either not at all or flat out. Or more simply stated, I am, or I hope I can say now I was, an extremist. There was a lovely blurb on the bottom of one of the pages in the Grapevine, many years ago, back in the middle 60s, which makes this point somewhat poetically, as it says that the alcoholic is usually to be found in two states. One, he's lying on his back in a field of summer flowers, gazing up at the sky. or 2, he's going down the road in a cloud of dust. There's nothing in between, and that's me, and I think many of us. The third thing, perhaps, wasn't so amusing when I first heard it. My therapist brought me step by step to the discovery that I am a suicidal alcoholic. And my drinking has always been an exercise in self-destruction, subconsciously sought. I got out in 52, and because I like fast cars, I collide with the authorities most often in moving violations. I've been on the San Bernardino County Jail, the Riverside County Jail, the LA County Jail, and the Los Angeles City Jail, always for driving under the influence of alcohol. In 1957, Labor Day, I came out of the Bahia Hotel at Ensenada with the explanation I was going to get back up to town and be ready to go to work the next day, that Tuesday. But about 4 kilometers north of Ensenada, I rolled my Jag, came out of it, tore up my back, cracked my skull in 2 places. Wednesday of that week, I was carried into San Diego Naval Hospital. And late Saturday night, early Sunday of that same week, I underwent skull surgery for the removal of, call it a blood clot for simplicity. I've talked to the people who were part of the party down there, and they, you were fine, you seemed sober, no problem, whatever. But I don't even remember getting in the car. And the people around here tell me that once I take a drink, I can't guarantee my behavior. I only have to remember those incidents when I did take a drink, and I had no knowledge or control over where I would wind up. For a year after the accident, I didn't have that much trouble for the simple reason that the doctor didn't permit me to drive. But after 10 months went by, I went down to San Diego Naval. I was going back and forth on regular follow-ups. And I put the arm on the neurosurgeon, a fine guy. And he says, okay, you see, just before surgery, I'd gone into convulsions all up and down my left side. And that was part of his concern about the driving bit, but we'd had no problem, so he let me go back to driving, and the problems began again. On one occasion, I was down there in the hospital area, had dinner near the hospital, had a few drinks in San Diego, and I decided to see just how fast I could make it back to Los Angeles. Was driving an XK-150, and the Greyhound bus people have told me that from the Greyhound bus station in San Diego to the main interchange in downtown Los Angeles is 120 miles. I did it that night in 92 minutes, just to see if it could be done, with the help of a little push water, it's sometimes called. This was my thing. I'd get drunk and get in my car and get up on the freeway and go somewhere. I'd close the watering holes along La Brea and Hollywood Boulevard and whatnot, get up on the freeway and, after I'd close the bar and go to Riverside for a cup of coffee, in an open roadster. You get plenty of fresh air that way. On occasion, such as going to Easter sunrise services, now as Gene knows, I live perhaps within 10 minutes of Hollywood Bowl, and they've always had a beautiful service there every Easter morning, for as long as I can remember. But no, I decided to sit up and drink until 2 o'clock that Sunday morning, and then get up on the freeway and go to Mount Rubidoux, West Riverside. At about 2:30, 2:45 in the morning, I've got my XK-140 with the needle laid over to 125 miles an hour. And my therapist keeps pointing to my efforts to kill myself, and I could see where it would come across that way. Somewhat cynically, I've sometimes spoken of it as my own search for serenity. Maybe that's another way of thinking about it. One more thing, and then I want to make a point. I was still at Hughes during this period, and one day a friend of mine who works in personnel called me in, says, got a minute? Let's talk, or words to that effect. And he pulled out what I used to call my attendance record. I now call it my absentee file. And the thing that impressed me was how much they were aware of the pattern involved. And that was his concern. First there had been Mondays. Then it had begun to be Mondays and Tuesdays. And it had got to be Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. And I remember leaving that particular meeting with the feeling that, well, hell, the only day the company's getting their money out of me is Thursday, Because Friday I was busy cutting the week short getting ready to go out and do something on the weekend, and it had begun to take me Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday to get over it. I guess I just hadn't found an excuse not to go in on Thursday, or I might have tried that too. And so we come to that day in July of 1960, and I'm annoyed when my friend says, well, have you thought of calling Alcoholics Anonymous? And I said, why? Why do I need them? And his answer to this is equally provoking. He says, well, it beats nothing, which may very well be the understatement of the century. And this is my attitude when I called in. Well, I'll see what this is all about. Oh, why not? Or some off-the-wall thing like that. From the beginning, I discovered that you were no fly-by-night affair. You knew what you were doing, and you still do, and you are in dead earnest. The guy who answered the phone, Carol A., retired from that central office position, I guess it was just last year. He went immediately to the heart of the matter. You have anything in the house? And I said, no. He says, okay, I'm going to have someone call you in about 30 minutes. And that was the essence of the first conversation. In about 30 minutes, the first 12-stepper ever to call on me, a fellow named Dwayne. And I will always mention him when I get a chance to pitch. Dwayne called, and I don't know where he is today. I hope he's alive and sober. But he was at work, and we talked for a few minutes, and then I sensed that he knew what he was all about, too. And after a few minutes conversation, he was picking up the vibes, I guess you could say. He said something about like this. He said, well, Wes, I'm at work today. He was an accountant. And I'm caught up in something that I would like to finish for my boss today. But if you need me, I will come now. And I almost cried over that. Because it had been a very long time since anyone had expressed concern of that kind for me. And here it came from a stranger over the telephone. And I said, well, something like, well, what do you suggest? He says, I can be there about 5:30. I said, fine. And at about 5:30, he knocked on the door and he came in, and instead of telling me what a mess I was, which was abundantly evident, by this time I was up on my feet, rattling around that apartment in a stinking terry cloth bathrobe. It's one of those situations where you don't know whether to sit down or get up and run, to put it courteously, you know. I've heard this kind of a hangover described on various occasions, but perhaps my favorite description is the story that some of you will remember, Joe Motes, who's passed on now. Joe used to love to tell the story about the two brothers who really hung one on bad blended stuff one night. And they woke up the next morning with their eyes going in different directions, and oh my God, they were sick. And they were rattling around their place, and finally one brother says to another, Joe, he says, I've got it. And his brother says, well, what do you mean? He says, I figure that if our luck holds out, we'll be dead by noon. So, instead of telling me what a mess I was, Dwayne introduced himself. He says, my name is Dwayne, and I'm an alcoholic. And I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And this was kind of surprising. I expected something quite different. And then he began to tell me about himself and about you, our fellowship. Somewhere along in here, he helped me to get some food down, and somewhere in the conversation he said something to the effect that, I'd like to take you to a meeting tonight. And I said, of course. And here, let me say quickly, I've never had any trouble coming or coming back to meetings. I said, but I ought to have a bath first. And he says, of course. And he quickly stripped down to his waist in order to watch me in the shower. He was concerned that I might fall. And I didn't. I got through that all right. But I love to tell this on Dwayne. He was cool. He was experienced. He knew what he was doing. But when it came to shaving, I blew his cool. And you'll understand what I'm talking about when I explain that I'm one of those who, for as long as he could, shaved with the old-fashioned straight-edge razor. I get a certain glee out of just thinking about it. I stepped out of the shower, and I grabbed the razor strap, you know, like barbers do, and I started to strap this razor, and I heard his cool, you know, just, you're not going to shave with that, are you? He had visions of me, you know, lying around in pieces, I suppose. dismembered, parts cut off and all that. He talked me out of it. I got a pretty good shave, and we went to my first meeting that night. It used to meet over in the area now where Universal City is, and that group has moved, I think, to Glendale or Burbank. But anyway, I remember the feeling as I entered the room. I remember the feeling that people meant it when they shook my hand and made me welcome and got me a cup of coffee, and I was kind of wide-eyed at all of this. There were 5 or 6 of us newcomers there that night. We were particularly fortunate in that our speaker was one of the ladies who was among the originals in north central Ohio in the late 20s and 30s. And she cracked us up by explaining that she had gone around in the late 20s and the early 30s during Prohibition, if there's anyone here old enough to remember that, with her jug in a knitting basket. Who would ever think of challenging a sweet little lady, who's busily knitting, socks or whatever girls knit when they knit, and she used this to hide her bottle in the knitting basket. And I thought that was great. You hear great things like that, and you sometimes feel a little disappointment that you didn't learn about them before you got here. I might have tried them myself. Just as I've occasionally met people, and more than occasionally I've met people here in the program that I think kind of nostalgically that I would love to have met before I stopped drinking. We could have had a ball, but we're having one now, aren't we? Right. But later on in that meeting, she said something which it is my purpose to repeat every time I pitch. And she addressed it particularly to us newcomers. And ever since, every time I pitched, I've always repeated it. Looking straight at us, she said, in a marvelously clear voice with emphasis, newcomers, and I'm speaking to our newcomers here and those who may be relatively new. Give us your best shot at this thing. Come and stand in or sit in with us here and have a long and a thoroughly responsible examination of what it is we're doing, what it is we're talking about. If, at the end of whatever period of time you have decided upon, you decide that what we have is not for you, you're free to go. Of course, we have nothing to give you back but your misery. The fear, the anxieties, the things that brought you here in the first place. And I was impressed by that. I was still standing up shaking in the middle of the floor at the end of the meeting, and the people are folding the chairs and so forth. I had to back all the way across the room to find some place to lean up against, and the regulars were dropping by. I began to hear our slogans, which here have so much guts in them. But I shall never forget this, call them elderly, but, a bright-eyed and bushy-tailed couple in AA or something other than elderly. They were in their middle 70s, I learned. And he has me by the hand and the elbow, and he's pumping my elbow, and he's talking program. Now, I can't remember a single thing he said, but I do remember the impression that his wife, who was standing right at his right shoulder, seemed to be one of those wives who has to wait until her husband runs out of breath before she can get a word in edgewise. And when he ran out or was running down, the old pump handle had slowed down and so forth, she looked up at me out from under a shock of very attractive gray hair, bright, clear eyes, all full of pizzazz and everything. And this is what we might call her edgewise word. She says, and yes, young man, you will discover that you'll get your sex life back again. And they're in their middle 70s yet. Well, I got to tell you that I've only been called on this once. And it merits adding. I was pitching out in Pasadena at a luncheon meeting, and there was one newcomer, and I think the guy who brought him in must have suggested, or perhaps he did on his own, to thank me for my pitch. And we shook hands, and I sort of sensed it was him because, as many of us well know, there's still what I call a kind of a hard rock in that newcomer's handshake, especially if he's still in withdrawal. And this was his first meeting, and the dialogue went something like this. After he said a few kind things about my pitch, He said, well, now, Wes, you brought it up. May I ask you, did you get your sex life back again? And I instantly hedged, which tells you I'm still dishonest, you know. I said, well, sir, how old are you? Looking for an out, you know. He said, well, I'm 64. Well, I recommended vitamins, you know, and lots of rest. And then as I continued along the line of this suggestion, and I love to tell it because it's kind of typical of what happens here in the program. By all means, stay off the booze. I began to discover that so many of our slogans exactly answered his question, you know. Easy does it. First things first. One day at a time, till it gets better as you go. In the beginning of this experience, you gave me two questions. The first was, are you having trouble with your drinking? Not, as it might have been, are you an alcoholic, or do you think you're an alcoholic? The term alcoholic implies a certain amount of understanding, diagnosis, insight, and whatnot. The guys who worked with me came at me from this direction. Are you having trouble with your drinking? To which my answer was yes. And then they gave me a second question. Do you want to do something about it? And I appreciate the question for the quality of its respect for my freedom of choice. In these years of involvement and activity here in the program, and I've joined in, I can think is a better way of saying it, a lot of fifth steps. One of the things that impresses me, and I state this as a personal opinion, is so many of us have waded through long lives of difficulty where we were whiplashed into corners without choice. And the second question moves toward the restoration of respect for my choice. Do you want to do something about it? To which my answer was also yes. Okay, they said to me, and you are still saying to me, if you want the things we've got, do the things we've done. For one thing, and one thing only, and that is sobriety. Some years ago, over at the Hollywood Saturday Night Meeting back in 64 or 65, which is a surprising number of years ago as I think about it, one of our grand old-timers, who many of you probably know, Sybil, came up to me one night and she said, Wes, whenever you pitch, there's something very useful that you might do for our fellowship. Whenever you pitch, she said, tell us how you stay sober. She says, I don't need to point out that at any AA meeting you're going to have the world's greatest collection of experts on how to get drunk. She said, or she pointed to the last line of the preamble, but she says, but our purpose here is to stay sober. And she used this last line of the preamble as a basis for her suggestion. And that sentence reads, our primary purpose is to stay sober. And I hesitate so as to make the point that it does not say that our primary purpose is to get sober. Our primary purpose is to stay sober. And it's in two parts, to help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And it's my total conviction that unless I do my best at both, I'll wind up not being able to have either one. Obviously, if I'm not staying sober, I can't help anybody get sober. And if I'm not helping others to get sober, I'm liable to discover that I can't stay sober. Simplified, this simply means that unless I do my best to give this program away, I might lose it. I recommend to all of those who will listen to me, especially to my babies and so forth and so on, that you get close to the best dictionary you can find as a way of understanding the meaning that the guys who wrote the program had for their terms. I got into a nitpicking argument after I first came on the program with one of the old-timers. Kai V has gone on now. And he sent me to a dictionary, and that's where I got this idea for the first time. And he sent me to a dictionary with the word sobriety. And I was surprised. The usual definitions for sobriety were there, but I had totally forgotten this one. Sobriety, moderation in thought and deed. Sobriety, moderation in thought and deed. So look what that sentence is saying now. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and to help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. Chapter 6 of the book Alcoholics Anonymous, and I quote, "We believe that that person who feels that mere sobriety is enough is unthinking." Is unthinking. And chapter 5, "Our liquor was but a symptom." And we remain here to discover that our drinking, our alcoholic behavior is but the surface symptom, if you will, of deeper living problems. And until we take the magnificent tools of this program and dig into and work with and come to terms with those problems, they also tell us that we discover that we can't help going back to booze. And I'm determined not to go that way again. I was around for 3 years and 2 months, flipping and flopping around. I blew it here. Whenever I went out, I seemed to want to stay about 3 months, and it took me that long, I guess, to get tired and to come back. And finally, on September 15th of 1963, I'd been off of a toot down to Huntington Beach, and I came back, and I haven't had a drink since. I think it's fair to say that I've never really quit drinking. That what I did, according to the directions of those who were helping me and this program, brought about a certain circumstance. And in the time I have left, let me try and explain that. I'd been around for most of those 3 years before I heard step 12. Step 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. And I had a kind of a feeling of, well, where'd that come from? And I don't have a hearing problem. Let me keep that clear. A little visual difficulty, but no hearing problem. And I'm thinking about this and how to use it. If I got you listening to me talk about principles, maybe you won't notice that I'm not taking the steps. That's what I mean, you know. But when I was ready to hear it, the paragraph which immediately follows step 12 pushed me into shape. We usually think of people getting pushed out of shape. This pushed me into shape. Listen to the first several sentences with this word principles in mind. Many of us exclaimed, "What an order, I can't go through with it." Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are adhering to something called principles. We are not saints. The point is that we're willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. And I set out to find out what these principles were for. I got great help from the first page of chapter 3, which I won't quote, time is short, which told me about that concession to my innermost self, the guy I face in the mirror. That until I made that concession to me that I was an alcoholic, I couldn't claim to have taken the first step. And I got help from the foreword to both editions, of the 1939 edition and later ones, wherein the guys in the 1939 edition, which is my favorite, make a statement. We of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, to show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. I've had invitations, numerous invitations to teaching experiences, step study groups. I conducted a step study group for OA for about 2.5 years. Well, more than that, really, but on 2 occasions. And I've always insisted that we read and study our big book with that word precisely in mind. That's where the program is to be found. I found most of the answer for the first principle, and I'll be brief about this, in the first several sentences of chapter 5, which you read here so well tonight, Caroline. It had been lying there all that period of time, and I had missed it, quote unquote. And I'm sure, as a result of the insights created by this experience, that there are still things that I need to know that I don't know because I won't hear them. Not because I can't, because I won't hear them. My discovery has to do with the second sentence of chapter 5. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. And I thought this was a suggested program. And the next several sentences come down heavily on that subject, winding up with this one. I've had the thrill, literally the thrill, of going into institutions to pitch and to try, as step 12 says, to carry this message. And chapter 5 reaches out to them on this subject. There are those, too, who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders. But many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. And it had been there all the time, and I had practically made a science out of missing it. The reason, of course, is I didn't want to hear it. It was step 1 itself that rounded off the discovery of this first principle. Now, our guys wrote the book in such a way that they never hit us over the head, you know. They say, here are the steps we took, which are suggested. Ours is a suggested program only, etc., etc. The word suggestion comes close to being transparent the way they use it. But they understood what they were doing. What they do, in effect, is they give us the benefit of their example. And there with step 1, they say of themselves. Now, we admitted that we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. Something which in my case, my family knew, neighbors knew, a couple of doctors knew, colleagues at work knew, judges, several policemen, jailers, all that bit, add in the people who serve, sell, and deliver the stuff and whatnot, that I couldn't handle booze and that my life was a mess. And thus, when I was ready to follow the guys who wrote this program, who hung it together, and the leadership that was here when I got here, and certainly Clancy I is one of these. Thank you. Certainly Clancy I is one of these. When I was ready to go, they led me for the first time in my life into the first meaningful beginning application of the spiritual principle which we develop in our lives as we carry out the assignment, which is step 1. And that principle is rigorous self-honesty, no exceptions, as it helps to overcome dishonesty, one of the symptoms of my illness. When I came to the program, I didn't know anything about that kind of honesty, honestly relating to you, to me, to God, to things, to ideas, to situations. I just didn't understand it. I didn't know anything about it. The honesty that I brought here with me, I try to describe as a kind of a cookie jar type of honesty, by which I mean something like this. You don't lie? Of course not. You never steal? Of course not. Oh, unless the rewards are great enough and you figure you can get away with it, you see. And I remember more than one occasion when I thought, in the privacy of my own place or whatnot, that I was pretty good at getting by without being caught at being dishonest. I learned this. Remember, I came in July of 1960, about the middle of the month, as I remember, and it was about the middle of the month of September 1963 before I found the drink that I pray will be my last one. And you might ask me, well, why is you around for 3 years and 2 months? What about your drinking? Or some question having to do with that. My answer to that question is, I was not ready to be honest with me. Not only on the matter of drinking, alcohol and all of that, but on the matter of the things, all my affairs, to borrow the phrase from step 12. I was not ready to be honest with me. And until I was ready to be honest with me, sobriety could not happen. No way. But when I was completely ready to be honest with me and did so to the best of my ability, I lost the need to drink. In the strictest sense of that, I have never quit drinking. The need and the desire to drink just disappeared. I've sought to demonstrate that by reading and searching our big book, I came to the discovery of that first principle and how we are given step 1 for the purpose of developing it. Briefly and in summary, let me connect the rest of them to the principles which they attach. In step 2, they say, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. The principle is hope here as it helps us to overcome despair. If you want an excellent definition for despair beside the dictionary, go back to the days and the hours before you came to us for the first time. That's a pretty good definition for despair. In step 3, we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. The principle here is faith, as it helps us to overcome fear. Sometimes people who attempt to explain this get into difficulty about the question of surrender, and it's a real question. Surrender is difficult to define. But you can examine the state of faith in your own life by asking the question, how capable am I of trusting? In the universal sense, faith is given us wherever in order to teach us to trust, because you can't live without trusting. And if you try to live without trusting, you fire right into something here in chapter 5, that self-will run riot business. Because if you can't trust, you have to do it yourself, and that's exhausting, among other things. In steps 4, 5, and 6, the principle is courage, as it helps to overcome cowardice. In step 4, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of our lives. And in step 5, we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. And in step 6, we were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. You mean people with defects of character aren't kind of automatically entirely ready to get rid of them? And the answer to that is no. The best way I've ever heard it said, fella, he was a lawyer, well-read and all that. He said quite simply about step 6, he says, look, I've discovered this about defects of character. If you're no longer enjoying your defects of character, it's because you're not using them properly. You will grow into the discovery that one of the purposes of this program is not necessarily to eliminate your character defects, but to teach you to use them properly. 4, 5, and 6, courage, cowardice. In step 7, we humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. Humility, as it helps us to overcome arrogance. Take the word arrogance to a legal dictionary. In steps 8, 9, and 10, in step 8, we made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. In step 9, we made direct amends to all such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. And in step 10, we continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. The principle here is responsibility, as it helps us to overcome our tendency toward irresponsibility in what we think, say, and do. In step 11, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only. And I hear an instruction in that. Only for the knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. I haven't done as much traveling as Clancy, and I really don't envy him that, but I've done my share. Last time Clancy and I met, we split a pitch in Midlands, Texas 2 or 3 years ago. But I've been all over the place. Something that you might think might be difficult. Let me alter step 11 ever so slightly in my personal experience. I pray for knowledge of God's will for me. He has always provided the power to carry it out. I don't have to worry about that part of it. And the principle here is patience. Patience, as it helps us to overcome impatience. As the result of these steps, and a discussion of these principles makes that first phrase take on more meaning, I hope. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. And the principle here is charity, not welfare. Charity, as it helps us to overcome selfishness and self-centeredness. Chapter 5, selfishness, self-centeredness, that we believe is the root of our problem. I'll wind up with a story which makes the point. One of our regular speakers, and if he's here tonight, forgive me for butchering the story that he and his wife made me a gift of. But for many years, I'm told he led one of the musical aggregations up in one of the places in Vegas. And he sometimes talks of the occasion where he looked out on the dance floor and there was a guy so drunk. It's what they call in Texas lap-legged. He's got a glass full of something that's about to slosh over, and he's out there determined to dance by himself. And our friend, a longtime member of the fellowship, decided he'd better do something about this because the guy was really an accident, quite literally going somewhere to happen. So he walked out and he spoke to him very thoughtfully. Something like, say, fella, wouldn't you rather sit down, or you wouldn't want to waste your drink, or you would, whatever. He tells us that the drunk pulled himself up as tall as he could, stared back as steadily as he could, and this was his reply. He said, look here, fella, there's something I want you to understand. I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm doing the best I can with what I got to work with. And let me recommend it as a definition for charity. The quality of mind or attitude which enables me to believe that at any given moment, every living human being is doing the best he can with what he has to work with. And this helped me to release your behavior while still caring about you. This helped me to understand the central purpose of the inventory of those resentments in step 4. And I came to the discovery that you are free to live your life entirely as you choose. But if there be any discomfort in that for me, I do something about me. I have no license whatsoever to tamper with the life of another human being. Alan Honors called this release. And when I did that, I discovered that an awful lot of problems about you were really of my own making. Whereas I came here in the beginning physically ill, mentally ill, emotionally ill, and spiritually nothing. Tonight, physically, I'm enjoying the best health I've ever had. Mentally, an increased order of logical, comfortable, and responsible thinking. Emotionally, I'm no longer an angry brat going around inside the body of a man. That's an awful mess. And spiritually, I'm increasingly aware of the presence and power of God in my life, not as a punishing, threatening element, but as a friend. I still have difficulties. With his help and your help, I meet them. Things work out all right. One last thing. My eyesight has disappeared since I came to the program. I read the big book in its entirety the night of my first meeting and so forth and so on. Finally had to quit work in 64. And let me confide to you and keep this to yourself, semi-confidential anyway. This business of loss of eyesight really isn't all that disastrous. When you consider that young ladies are far more interesting by the Braille method. And I think this great adventure in self-discovery, in sensitivity, in awareness, in responsibility, and above all in sobriety will continue for me so long as God grants me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Thanks so much for having me. You're a great one.
Good evening. My name is Jim Sykes, and I'm an alcoholic. Jesus. Welcome to the Pacific Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay, the floor mat of this meeting is 2 10-minute speakers, right? Two 10-minute speakers, a coffee break, a main speaker. Our first 10-minute speaker tonight is Gordon G.R. My name is George. I'm an alcoholic. I drank for 16 years. I was a nightly drinker. I was born in a middle-sized town, middle-income family, and during my childhood, I was not exposed to alcoholism at all. My parents drank they'd have a bottle of bourbon and it'd last them about 3 or 4 years. So I didn't get exposed to drinking at all till I got in the service. I joined the Navy at 19, and I got drunk about, maybe 3 or 4 times. And my personality changed when I did drink. However, I was not an alcoholic, nor was I nor did I have to drink at that time. When I got out of the service, I started to go back to school, and that kind of worked out a little bit. And then I dropped out of school, and I got a regular job, 8-hour, 5-day-a-week job, and I would come back from this job at home, and I started every night rewarding myself by going down to the local beer hall and just having maybe 2 or 3 drinks, and then coming home. And they say the progression of this, they say this disease progresses, and it did very slowly for me. For about the first 2 years, I would spend my time down in that bar, and then I gradually, just on my way home, would buy a 6-pack, and over the 16 years, it was a very, very slow progression, but it was a very steady progression downhill. My last drunk was I started out on a Friday, and I started drinking around the clock. I'd never done that before. I'd always drank at night, but very seldom during the daytime. Very seldom got drunk in the daytime. But this particular Friday night, I started drinking around the clock. And that Sunday night, I don't know what happened. I guess it's that moment of clarity that they talk about. Something said to me that I had to do something about this drinking. My progression had taken me to the point where I really, as I look back at it, was only about 1 step away from Skid Row, even though I was a functioning drunk. I had a job, not a very good one, but I had a job. But that was about the only thing that kept me away from Skid Row at the time. I was living in a real hole in the wall, and I lived in that hole in the wall until almost my first birthday, but I stayed sober. Since I came on the program, my life has gotten steadily better. Not in any leaps and bounds, but gradually has gotten better. I have not taken a step back. It's always a step for the better. 3 months ago, I got fired for the first time. I mean, just outright fired for the first time in 18 years. And I went to my sponsor. He gave me a list of dues to keep myself active, to just go out and do the footwork. And within 5 weeks, I had a job with not a lot more money, but more money and a better job, and a job where possibly I could have a little bit more of a future if I stay where I'm at right now. I live in a halfway decent apartment. I've gone through a lot of the pain in the last, I'd say about the last year, an awful lot of pain, but I go into it and I work out of it. I take the steps. I try to stay active. I go to meetings 7 nights a week. I tried to work the program. I realized that this is a lifetime commitment for me, that I am not going to have possibly another recovery. I've got another drunk in me, but not another recovery. I live in a complex with somebody who has been in and out of the program, and I can't really see myself grow, or haven't been able to see myself grow till I look at him and talk to him. And then in him, what I was like before is reflected back to me. And that has really told me that I have grown in the program. For the newcomers, it was the meetings at first that saved me. Like I said, I was a nightly drinker, and the meetings were the substitute for the drinking, the immediate substitute for the drinking. Another important thing, and this really became important 2 or 3 months ago, was a sponsorship. I realized when things look like they're going bad, that a sponsor can be a tremendous help to you. Thank you. Thank you. Our second 10-minute speaker will be Peggy C.
Hi, I'm Peggy, and I'm an alcoholic. Hi! I was talking to my sponsor today, and I told her I'm not asking you, but I was I thought about it, not to come to the meeting tonight so I could watch the second part of The Amazing Howard Hughes. So the thought led me, thank you, Si, I really want to thank you for asking me to speak. Here's what my, I'm 32, and of those years, I've got a year, 4 months, and 7 days of sobriety, and I owe that to AA, and I owe that to the Pacific Group in general. I have a brother that's 3.5 years older than me, and a sister that's 21 months older than me. And I've got a mother that's kind of like was in Al-Anon before Al-Anon was discovered. I've got a father that's got 25 years on the program of AA. And my brother and sister are normal people. They both drink and they don't abuse it. And hats off to them. My father joined AA when I was 7, and he left the home a year later. And to me, he abandoned me at that time. He was the apple man. I'd do anything for him. I'd give him beer, I'd give him newspapers, I'd give him slippers, and he'd scratch them on my head, and I just loved him. And he split, and I went, And my brother and sister at that time had adult emotions. My mother leaned on them, and I would sneak around and listen to them, and they'd be talking politics or I don't know what, and I just, boring. So I went to school, and I cheated, and my brother and sister went to college, and so it was expected of me, and so I was going to college. And so I went to college by copying my sister's essays and getting straight A's. And math came easy, but English was a bear, and I got to college, and I never dated in high school, and the two things college did teach me is I was an alcoholic, and they introduced me to men. And in that order, I had booze and men. And I drank alcoholically from the beginning. I blacked out, I passed out, I vomited on borrowed sweaters. It was it wasn't worse than that. And when I got out of college, the current boyfriend I was living with split for a girl that could supply him in drugs. And I had no purpose in college. I got out and I went, okay. And I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I was working as a typist, and he left, and I went, And I kind of wanted to leave, but instead I really abused the drugs and the booze, and I was very fortunate. I had these people that took a personal interest and said, come on down for a physical, because I wasn't sleeping and I was using a lot, and my behavior and personality changed, and they got me to psychiatric ward. And when I got out of there 7 days later, self-worth never was there, but it was even in the -0 category. So I was taken home by my mom, who moved me out of my apartment, and I didn't hear not one word of protest, because I was wiped out. And I was introduced to AA in 68. And then again in 72, I was introduced again after I, in my head, committed suicide. And in 75, the pain got again bad, and I went back to AA. And I was in 4 psychiatric hospitals, and I never could identify with what the people said, the total despair, the total remorse. And I played in AA. I liked the people. I was comfortable there, but I never really got it on as far as seriously. And I was lucky. One day in 77, I got tired and I wanted out again, that escape, because that's the way I used pills and chemicals and booze just to escape from my nerves. And so, pain, emotion, whatever. And I took all kinds of booze. My favorite was vodka and gin and brandy, and I took all kinds of Valines and Dalmines, and it just wasn't going to turn off. It wasn't working. So I took a hot shower, and the next morning I remembered I woke up and I was sprawled out in the bathroom and there was a giant 3rd-degree burn, and hey, I felt total remorse, and I had what George talks about, that moment of clarity, and I went, hey, Lord, help me. And I got up to see my father, and he's been about patience. He's been talking to me for 9 years about getting into AA, and kept conning about, oh boy, that 4-step stuff, never wrote one thing on it. And so what's, okay, I don't know, when is it? And so I talked to him, and he said, get to the Monday night meeting in Inglewood. So I did. And I met this girl, Laverne B., and she was so dynamic, so strong, so comfortable looking, and I was really attracted to her, and I shared a lot with her. She shared a lot with me. She told me, come back next Monday. This speaker is coming, and I went, oh dear, I hope she's not really placing personalities over principles. A little newcomer like me thinking that. Because in 68, my sponsor that I had for 3 months OD'd on pills and booze. And so the following Monday, I was intrigued, though, and I came back the following Monday, and it was like a spiritual awakening. Clancy Emerson talked, and he was like not talking to anybody but me, egocentric here. And Laverne talked to me and said, well, if you want more of what we got, come Wednesday, but you won't make it. And I made it. And thank God. I got Janet in that night for a sponsor, and she gave me good direction. She told me to get to a meeting every day. And it's not sure I wasn't. And I followed those directions, and then I got really rebellious. I started taking back the towel, and I went out and I called her and I said, I'm getting drunk. She said, I'll have to buy you. Huh, good. And I went to my apartment and I drank. And I drank very little, and I said, good God, I'm really sick. And so I came to the yard. I really was sick. And I'm sick now, but I'm a little better. And I went to the yard, and Janet said, I'll still sponsor you, but I suggest Clancy. And so I used Clancy with the resentment. I chose Clancy. I got Clancy. And I did not share with him at all. And yet he gave me all kinds of stuff, act as if. And, you know, he helped me with my car when I had a problem. And then I started running my own program for 8 months, which I highly do not recommend, and I don't know why the high-powered allowed me to stay sober, but I managed to. And when I had a very unpleasant experience going on, I realized my behavior hadn't changed that much, I hadn't grown that much, I hadn't worked on my steps, so I got Nancy I as my sponsor in July of this year, and I feel really good. I'm going to a lot of meetings, I'm shaking hands. I want to thank the girls that allow me to take them to the meetings, Karen and Jasmine, and other people that, thank you.
My name's Cy Goldman. I'm an alcoholic. Celebrate AA birthdays at this meeting. And for each 365 days of sobriety, we give a cake with the appropriate number of candles on it. We define sobriety as being free from alcohol, pills, pot, or any mood-altering chemicals. And tonight, we have several birthdays. And our first birthday is for 1 year for Rick D. well, under any other circumstances, or better, rather, let me say that. I'd like to thank Joe, my sponsor, and his wife for a deep understanding of me. He got my number pretty good. I'd like to thank Clancy for getting sober. I imagine that was quite an experience for him. And I feel good, thank you. Happy birthday, Rick. Our second birthday is also for 1 year for Stan L.
Hello, my name is Stan L. I'm an alcoholic. I'll just say a few words, especially to the people that have under 30 days of sobriety. It seems just a few weeks ago I was in that same group, so I know how you feel, but I found out along the way that I finally accepted, after about 15 years of alcoholic period, that the AA philosophy of one day at a time actually works, really feels good. So to you newcomers especially, just hang in there and try it. You won't regret it. I know I don't. And for helping to make my year of sobriety possible, I really have to thank a member of the Pacific group, and that's Mr. Joe West, the fellow giving me my cake. He gave me a lot of his time and realistic understanding and a lot of moral support when I really needed it the most. And I don't think I'd have made it without him. And another member of the group gave me a lot of his support, Mr. Chuck B. He listened to a lot of my foolish frustrations, and I appreciate their help. So that's about it. Thanks, folks. Good night.
Happy birthday, Stan. And our next birthday is for 2 years, for Delinda.
Hi, I'm Delinda, and I'm an alcoholic. I'd like to thank Susie for giving me my cake. I love and respect her as my sponsor. On top of that, I really like her as a woman. I never thought about being sober 2 years. I used to daydream about being sober 1 year, but this last year I have had to walk through some of my deep fears within me, and I found out that they were just boogeymen, that there was nothing to be afraid of, and I'm really grateful that I don't have to fear those things anymore. I feel good as a woman. I feel like I'm really growing. I see the growth this year. My life has never been better, and this group has really helped me to find good sobriety. And I want to thank you all for being a friend to me. Thank you.
Happy birthday, Delinda. Our next birthday is for 3 years, for Terry. I'm Terry, and I'm an alcoholic. I started here 3 years ago in this group, and I mostly go to other meetings now. I'm still sober. I took most of the other drugs. I have not taken any drugs. I'm still with my wife, Barbara, after it'll be 15 years in November. My kids are healthy, and I'm into a new career in which I'm exceptionally successful at it. I'm leading a new life, and it was a good deal to come here. I'm grateful that I came here. I'm Happy to be here today, 3 years sober. Happy birthday, Terry. Our next birthday is also for 3 years, for Pat P.
Hi, my name is Pat Pegues, and I'm an alcoholic. I love sobriety. I love Alcoholics Anonymous. This is a fantastic way to go. I'd like to thank Betty, my sponsor, for giving me my cake, and for sponsoring. I'd like to thank my first sponsor, Maggie, for the first year and a half that she sponsored me. She helped me a lot, showed me how to stay sober and how the program works, and I owe a lot to her. And I'd like to thank Betty for sponsoring me this last year and a half. She's taught me so much. There just aren't words to say. I particularly would like to thank her for excuse me, the help she's given me the last 7 or 8 months. There have been what Keith would call seemingly bad things going on, and Betty has helped me to. One of the things she's helped me do is to learn to live a day at a time. I just didn't understand how that worked. And the way it works is you just live a day at a time. And she's helped me to realize it seems so simple, but I just couldn't grasp it. And she's helped me do that. She's helped me get through these difficult times with some joy and some comfort and some dignity, and I am very grateful to her for that. Thank you.
Happy birthday, Pat. Our next birthday is for 4 years, for Nancy L.
My name is Nancy. I'm an alcoholic. I'd like to thank Susie for giving me my cake and for being such a great sponsor this past year. It's been the last year, a lot of some seemingly bad things have happened to me too, and I've needed a lot of support and a lot of direction, and Susie has given those to me, and I want to thank her. I'd like to thank her husband, Chuck, also, and I'd like to thank Clancy for the help he has given me. There are a lot of people in this room that I really feel close to, and I feel I'm very fortunate to have so many good friends, and I'm proud to have 4 years, and I'm very proud to be a member of this group.
Happy birthday, Nancy. Our next birthday is for 5 years, for Bill A.
Hi, I'm Bill Allen, and I'm an alcoholic. I'd like to thank my sponsor, Chuck, for giving me the cake and for his help over the past, I guess, 2.5, almost 3 years that he's been sponsoring me. I'm proud to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm proud to be a member of this group. This group, in particular, is what AA stands for. When I first came around AA, I tried many groups. I live up in the valley, and there was nothing. I saw lots of signs that said, "We care," but, you know, nobody seemed to give a damn about me, so... And, I mean, it was myself. It was really me, but when I did find the Pacific group one day after work, I found a little meeting on Ohio Street, and I went to it, and I started to get the feeling of the fellowship. And the fellowship lives in the Pacific group, for me anyway. And I have to thank Clancy for that, for starting this spirit that makes people like me, or are too sick, people who want to get sober, want to stop drinking, but are too sick to know how to ask, and too sick to know what to do. Just giving them a place where they can slowly but surely come to realize that AA has what it takes to get me feeling the way I want to be. And I thank you all.
Happy birthday, Bill. next birthday is for 10 years for Marvin R.
My name is Marv Rosenthal, and I'm an alcoholic. And I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be at any meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I got to tell you, the 10 years was a snap. Hey, if you're having a problem, it's not my fault. I'd like to thank my sponsor, Keith, for making most of those years easy and giving me a lot of help. And the reason I tell you it's a snap because there really isn't much you got to do. You got to come to these goddamn meetings, and you got to work them goddamn steps, and you got to change your life. And if it turns out like mine, you've changed it for the better. Because for the first time in my life, and for quite a few years now, I feel like a whole human being. I feel good inside all the time. I've had a lot of problems over the years, but nothing to make me feel like I used to feel. No problem I've ever had has dragged me back down to the person I used to be, and that's a gas. And I didn't do it because I'm hip, slicker, and cool than anyone else in the room. A few of you maybe, but not everyone. I did it because the program laid it out for me. And I had a sponsor and somebody to talk to. And when he wasn't around, I had as strong as help as he gave me, with friends like Clancy and Clint and Chuck. And I'm not afraid to lay it back to them if I got to. Because you see, I don't care how they feel about my problem. All I care about is how they can help me with it. And I listen. I'm not telling you that if they gave me direction or told me what to do, I went out and I did it. I'm not that type of alcoholic. I'm the type that got to think it over a little bit, you know. If it hurts a little bit and you notice it, I'll let it go another week or so that you notice that I'm really hurting. But eventually the message comes across. I'd like to give you all one simple message. There's good and there's bad. And I've got to tell you, good's a whole lot better. And when I came here, I felt nothing but bad. And I didn't like it. And I didn't use any magic or nothing. Some guy come over to me and says, well, what are you feeling bad for? Why don't you feel good? And I have since. You got to explain it to me, you know. And I felt good through some trying times. I've had a marriage of 20 years dissolve, which in my case was a good thing. I've been in trouble with the law since I've been sober. And that also turned out to be a good thing. Because every experience I've been through that is seemingly bad or hurts has taught me something. And I learned real good. I haven't repeated the same mistake more than once or twice. That's better than 3, 4, and 5 times or continually. I feel good. I like my motives. I like I like Marv Rosenthal. I think he's a neat guy. I like what's inside. I like where I want to go. I like the people I'm around. I also got married on the program, and I found out I love my wife most of the time. And that's okay. It really is okay. I'm grateful. See what you did? I'm grateful to each and every one of you. Thank you.
Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.